Welcome back to another session in database concepts. I'm Manibhushan D'Souza, Assistant Professor at Computer Science Department in Dr. P. Dayananda Pai, P. Satish Pai, GFGC Mangalore Car Street. Today, we are going to continue from where we have left in the last class. So, we were talking about the file system. So, what is this file system and what are its problems? We are going to discuss this concept in today's class. File system started prior to the databases. So in olden days, people realized that the computer can do a lot of things very easily. In particular, the repeated things can be done much more efficiently in computer as compared to humans. So what they decided is they started developing programs. And while developing the programs, they were supposed to store the data in some location. So they just viewed the real life scenario. In real life scenario, what people were doing is, so accounts department created a file and it stored that file. Similarly, sales department created their own files and they started storing in their own location. Same way, if you take the analogy of a school, so the computer science department created the files related to the students who have joined in the computer science department in their own cabin. Same way, physics department stored the details of students who have taken physics and they have stored in their own shelf. The same analogy was directly taken up into the computer programming, and what they did was they created files for different programs. So we had one program which was doing marks card analysis. So one program did this marks card analysis. The marks card details were stored in one of the file. The way in which the data is stored in this file was relevant to the program that processed the marks. So whether the highest marks was stored first, whether the obtained marks was stored, whether the minimum marks was stored, whether the result pass or fail was stored, all these details, how the data is getting stored, dependent on how the program processed that particular data. In the same way, just imagine people at office, they also wanted to store the details about the student, like the names of the student, whether they have paid the fees, whether they paid the examination fees, the course fees, and all those details. So the people at office, they also developed some program, and that program also stored some information. Again, the information that is stored in this file was relevant to the program that was using it. So the end result where the system started storing the files in permanent records at various files. Okay, and to read the data from these files, different programs were used. So one program can read the data from one of the file, but the same program may not be able to read the data from the other file because the format in which the data was written in this file was not appropriate for this program to use it. So that was one of the major problem. So we had a lot of files, and these files were specific for one of the programs. So the program which was using the one file, was not able to use the files that was created by somebody else. Even though the student's name, student's address and phone numbers were there in the office file, that was the computer science department or physics department was not able to read that thing because the physics department or computer science department or maybe a chemistry department was using the other program, and the different program was not able to read the content. The reason is it was not stored in the format which was specific for a particular program. So this is one of the problem. So just to give you an analogy, so we had the customer relation information system. If you take that thing, so the customer orders, whatever customers have paid, the whatever orders they have placed, that was stored in the invoices files. In the same way, the name of the customer, their details, their shipping address, and all that information was stored in one other, and the mailing list was stored in the other. So what happened is different programs were using different files, and those files, because it was created by either the different types of programmers. For example, one program was written by one person, the other program was written by other person from some other different company. So there was a problem of mismatch in the structure of the files, and the files were not, it was not possible for the olden days people to exchange the data among the files. Now let's look at what are the problems that were encountered in the file system. One of the problem that the file system encountered was the redundancy. What is the meaning of saying redundancy is, suppose I at the computer science department store your details, your name and telephone number, and maybe the address, your parents' phone number, and so on for my reference. So people at the physics department also store your name, your phone number, your address, your parent phone number, and so on. The maybe maths department also did the same thing. Now you notice that there are three different departments, maybe the computer science department, the physics department, the mathematics department. Every department is using the same information in the different files. So this is called as a repetition of information, and we call that as redundant. Redundant means it is simply getting repeated. The same data is getting repeated in different files. What you may say that what is the problem if you repeat it? First of all, it is unnecessarily taking disk space, because I am storing the same information, somebody else is also storing the same information, somebody else is also storing the same information. You can get the English department, the Kannada department, the Hindi department, everybody is storing the same information which is not required. It is the same thing that is simply getting repeated, and it is simply consuming the disk space. The other problem was that the format in which I store and the format in which mathematics department store the data, they may be different. So when they are different, they are not consistent. So the same program cannot be used. My program cannot be used to read the data from mathematics department because they have different format. The next problem that comes into picture is the problem of inconsistency. What is the meaning of saying inconsistency? Is the data itself is not consistent. For example, you may change your mobile number and you may come and tell me, sir, my mobile number has changed, please update my mobile number. So I will update it. You may go to mathematics department and also tell them, sir, my phone number has changed, and they may change it. Now you may forget to tell the same thing to the physics department. Now what happened is your phone number in maths department is something different. Your in the computer science and maths, your phone number is same, but in the physics department your phone number is different. Or maybe there is a spelling mistake. You go and tell the physics department that change my spelling is different. The physics department changes it, but you forget to say the same thing with the computer science department as well as maths department. So here again, what is going to happen is The data which is stored, even though the same data, redundant data is stored, but it becomes inconsistent. The reason is because of the updation. So when the updation occurs, you must see to it that the same updation occurs in all the files. Otherwise, data stored in different files are different, and that leads to the inconsistency. Let's look at the other problem that is faced by the file system. The other problem that we face with the file system is the difficulty in accessing the data. For example, if I write a program that will list the name of the student, their class, and the marks obtained by the student, and maybe it's going to show me the first class, second class, and so on. However, I have stored all the details about the students, like their names, their address, their details, and everything is stored. But my program shows the name of the student, or maybe register number of the student, their course, marks obtained, and it's going to show whether it is first class, second class, third class, or anything. So it's going to show only this much. Now what happens is, tomorrow if I want to know how many of these students are coming from Kasargod, so I want only the list of students who are coming from Kasargod, not the all thing. I want maybe a subset of the result of students who are coming from Kasargod for my some reference purpose. Now the original program which lists all the students cannot do that thing, because it will list only the full details. It cannot filter out. So what is the option that I am left with? I have to go to the source code of the program, modify the source code to obtain that detail. So detail, that is the details of all the students who are coming from Kasargod. Now suppose if a principal asks me and says that, okay, I want you to give me the names of all the students who have scored first class and who are coming from Kasargod. Now I have the list of students who are coming from Kasargod. From this list, again I have to filter out the students who have scored first class. Again I have to write one more program. So that means to say that when the query means the question or the data extraction. So when you try to extract different types of data from the system, the program has to be modified. So this is the difficulty of accessing the data. Next one is the isolation. This I have already talked about. So we know that physics department has one same data. The other maths department has one data. Computer science department has the data. The English department has the data. Everybody has the data, but they are in different location and at different places and in different format. So using them directly at one location is not possible, because the data is isolated in terms of the company. If you take the commercial organization, sales department has the data, accounting department has the data, customer information system has the data. Every department has the data, but they are isolated. That means they are placed at a different location. So when you have the file system, you cannot get the data at one location. So if you are using database, the data will be there at one location and everybody can access it from the centralized location, so that everybody gets the same view of the data, not the isolated view. Next one is the integrity problem. So this is a difficult challenge when it comes to the file based system. Sometime we may want to impose some restriction on the data that is stored in the file. For example, students' marks cannot be negative. Suppose if you get a student with minus 45 marks, that's not relevant. So if a student can get a marks of 0, or if the highest mark is 100, they can get 100. So if the highest mark is 100 and if a student's marks is 101, then this leads to the integrity problem. So the data is not proper. So there is some integrity problem with this. Now, when it comes to the file system, the program that is written, it has to check whether the data is placed in a particular field or a particular location, is it proper? So it is a extra burden on the part of a programmer to check whether the data is within this constraint. And we know very well the constraints changes. So you are familiar with that word, because those who are coming from Kerala and other, when you cross the border, there were constraints. So the constraints are changing. They change the rule every now and then, and when the rules changes, the data that is stored has to comply with the changes. If you are doing it in a program and adding that rule, every time the constraint changes, you have to modify the program. Whereas when it comes to the database, you can go to the database and easily put a constraint saying that the value must be this, or only this type of data is allowed, and you can put a lot of constraint. We are going to see that how we can easily do put the constraint in the on the values that are stored there. However, such an option is difficult when it comes to the file system. So this is the problem of integrity. Now let's look at the other problem that is faced by the file system. The other problem faced by the file system is the problem of atomicity. Now, what is the meaning of it? Suppose we have two sets over here. One is, say, we have a person A here and a person B here. We put in capital, and there are 100 rupees in A's account. Now I want to transfer rupees 20 to B's account. So let me say in B's account there are 150 rupees are there. If everything goes fine, once the transaction occurs, A will be left with 80 rupees and B will be left with 170 rupees. So this is after the transaction, 20 rupees has been transferred from A to B. Now just imagine that the program starts and the 20 rupees are removed from the A's account. So when you remove 20 rupees from the A's account, the A's account will have 80 rupees because 20 rupees has been removed, and then the 20 rupees has to be deposited into the B's. So the 20 rupees are removed now, and suddenly the power fails and the system crashes altogether. Now what happened? Now it so happened that A's account 20 rupees has been deducted, but that is not deposited in the B's account. So this is a problem in file system. In file system you can't do anything about it. However, in the database you can take this whole process. What is this whole process? Subtracting 20 rupees from A's account and adding 20 rupees to B's account. These two things has to be done as a single unit. So if you subtract 20 rupees from here, you have to deposit 20 rupees on the other side. If two things have not happened, then this entire transaction is incomplete. If suppose if you are able to deduct 20 rupees from here, and for some reason if you are not able to add 20 rupees to the other side, then this whole transaction is not complete. When the transaction is not complete, you have to revert all whatever you have done. So if you are not able to add 20 rupees to the other's account, then you have to bring back the 20 rupees and redeposit it back to the A's account. So this is called as atomicity. What is the meaning of saying atomicity? Is you take from the A's account, you take, I think I'm in caps lock. Okay, you take amount from A's account and you deposit something in the B's account. So deducting from the A's account and adding into the B's account, this whole thing is one unit. So generally when we say it is one unit, we call it as atom. Atom is one, we have studied a bit of chemistry. So you know that atom means one full thing. So that is why we say it is atomic. So in other words, this kind of thing is called as atomicity of updates. That means to say that when a process occurs, we can tell the database that the following set of instructions are atomic. So you may write many set of instructions, but you can say that entire thing is one atomic unit. So if any of the instruction fails, then you have to undo all the operation and bring back to the previous state. So when you write a program, you may have many lines of instructions. You can tell the database that this whole thing is one atomic unit. If anything fails, if the last set fails, then also bring it back to the previous state. Bring back the whole system to the original state, because this whole thing is not complete. One of the unit or one of the pieces has failed. So this idea is called as atomic update. We can easily do that thing in database, but it is not possible to do that in our file system. Next part is the problem of concurrent access by multiple users. Now suppose if you say you have a data here, let's say this is A's account and there are 100 rupees in A's account. Let's say this is a bank account. So A goes and deposits a check for withdrawal. So he says, I want to withdraw 50 rupees. So he goes to the bank counter, gives a check of 50 rupees. One of his parents or maybe his friend goes to the ATM and withdraws 20 rupees. So how much money has been withdrawn? One is 50 rupees and the other one is 20 rupees. So what must be the amount left with the A now? So totally we have 50 rupees withdrawn by the check and 20 rupees withdrawn by ATM. So 70 rupees is gone. So you must be left with 30 rupees. A must have 30 rupees at the end of this one. So one, he is withdrawing using a check from the bank. The other one withdrawing 20 rupees from ATM. Now imagine a situation. So here both the transaction occurs simultaneously. That means let's say at 10 o'clock, sharp at 10 o'clock, both the cashier at the bank checks the account and he or she will check, okay, the balance is 100 rupees. Same time, the friend goes to the ATM, checks the balance as 80 rupees. Now, both of them knows that, so the bank person knows that the original amount was 100. So he deducts 50 rupees. So the remaining balance, according to the cashier, is 50. Because he sees 100 rupees in the account, deducts 50 rupees because 50 rupees has to be given because check has been produced. So the remaining balance is 50. Same thing, the friend goes to the ATM, checks the amount is 100 rupees. So withdraws 20 rupees, remaining balance is 80. So look at the problem here now. So because this transaction is done simultaneously, Both of them will check that the amount is 100 right at the beginning, and they will do the usual work, deduct 50 rupees, remaining balance is 50. The other person sees, okay, 100 rupees was the original balance, remaining balance is, if you deduct 20 rupees, the remaining balance is 80. Now when they update it, what happens? Suppose if the cashier updates it faster, then the amount will change to 50. After that, if the ATM person updates it, then the amount changes to 80. Now, in whether it is 80 or 60, so suppose if cash completes the transaction first, then ATM transaction completes, then the cashier will write 50. This will be overwritten by the ATM as 80. Suppose if the ATM does it first, 80 is written first, and the cashier writes it back, and it becomes 50. So either you will have 80 rupees or 50 rupees depending upon who did the transaction last. So if the bank is doing the transaction last, then it is going to be 50, or if the ATM is doing the transaction last, it's going to be 80. But you know very well the original amount after this transaction should have been 30. It is not 80 nor 50. So this is going to create a huge problem to the bank, because you know very well bank allows you to do the transaction from different things. You can do the transaction using mobile, ATM, credit card, debit card, and so on and so forth. So this is called as the problem of concurrent access. So whenever there is a concurrent access, this problem is going to start. Now let me give you one more analogy. Now you know very well, now admissions are going on. For example, let me say that there are 25 seats are there for BSc, and all the seats are filled. All the 24 seats are filled. The last seat is remaining. 25th seat is remaining. Okay. So this number is remaining. So people at office, you know very well, admissions can be done online, admission can be done offline. So this is remaining, it's not yet filled. So students from the online checks how many seats are available in for BSc Computer Science. So the 24 is the number, last seat is remaining. So this is 24. So they know that one seat is available. Office people will also check how many seats are available, how many seats are filled. 24, last seat is there. So office people will get the next number is 25. So office people knows that, okay, the next student is 25. There are only 25 seats are there for BSc. So office people will ask the student, okay, give me the details, this is the last seat, quickly fill this. So the student who is there in the office will fill, and his register number is 25. Same thing, the person maybe who is sitting in Kerala and who checks the number, last seat is available, 24 seats are filled, so the last seat is available, 25th seat, he or she will start filling it. So when they update it, what's going to happen? So when they update it, so this, either this or this, whose number is going to come here? Because both of them have taken it as 25. So 25 will be overwritten there. One of them will be able to write it, because you know very well both of them are saying that it is the 25th seat. So all these things happen because two people are simultaneously accessing it, and this is the problem of concurrent access. So this happens with the file system. When there are more than one person accessing it, you always end up in some or other type of problem, like two people are trying to read the balances and then trying to update it in the, and how I told you in the last case, and maybe this is the other case. The next problem that comes into picture is the problem of security. You cannot restrict anybody from accessing the data. So once a person has an access to the file, they can read all the data which is there in the file. Maybe you can encrypt that file if you know what is encryption. That's a different thing altogether. But you cannot say that such and such person can only view this part of the file, or such and such person can only view this part of the file. Some only selected data can must be given to someone. For example, if a person who is there in the office, they are not supposed to get the telephone number of the students. They can only add the marks, update the marks, and so on. They are not supposed to get the telephone number of a student. You cannot restrict that in a file system, because file every data is accessible. This is true even in the bigger company, like a manager in the bank must have access to a lot of data, but a clerk, they are not supposed to get the details of the clients, like how much balance they have, and all the details are not should not be shown to the user, because it will create a privacy issue. Just imagine you go to the hospital, and your disease information, whatever disease you have, that is disclosed to everybody. You will feel bad that I went there for my treatment, even though it may be a simple fever or maybe a simple headache. But you don't want entire hospital's staff to know that you have some problem. So only the selected people, selected doctor, or maybe selected nurse, they can get the access to the data. Not everyone. This is the problem. This is called as security. How to secure the data so that that is not disclosed to a wrong person. It's not so easy in file system. However, it is very easy to secure the data in the database system. So these are some of the problems that we face in the database system. Let's try to summarize whatever we have studied. So some of the problem that you find in the file system is data redundant. So data gets redundant, and this lead to the consistency problem. The same data is repeated, but in some places data gets updated, in the other place data does not get updated. This is the problem of consistency, and in database you don't have the redundancy. That's why we get the consistency. It takes longer time to develop a file system, because many programs has to be written, and the programmer have to even take care of how to store and retrieve the data, whereas that is not an issue with the database system, because database management system will handle storing and retrieving of the data. So it is much faster to develop a program in using the database system. Next one is the integrity. I've already talked about the integrity issues that comes into picture. That is not there in the database. The other one is the problem of concurrent anomalies. So when more than two people are using, we cannot control easily in the file system, whereas it is much easier in the database system. The next part is the security problem. You have to put extra effort in order to achieve security in the file system, whereas there is already an authorization mechanism wherein you can give the permission and say that only such a such person can access these data, and others are not allowed to access. And we also have the problem of atomicity. I've already told you when I talked about integrity problem. The data, you can say that all the transactions are atomic. That means if within a particular transaction, even if one of them fails, entire thing has to be undone. So in other words, either all the steps are done or none of them have been performed. So this is the problem of atomicity, which is taken care in the database. And the last one is difficult to access, because the file format is different for different programs, whereas here database provides the same consistent view to all the persons who are accessing the data. With this, I conclude today's class. We will, in the next class, we will see what are views and how to use the views. So thank you for watching this video.